Hi BookTube, I'm here today with my January wrap-up. Now on to physical books. I also read what might be the heaviest book on my shelf, and that is The Familiar One by Mark Z. Danilewski. And this is a story told in 9 different perspectives, in 9 different ways. And if you know anything about Mark Z. Danilewski, you know that he really likes to experiment with formatting. Like we have just fragments on one pages, we have graphic text, and there are actual graphics in here as well. It's a fascinating story. This series is going to be 27 books long. I think it's best to go into these books blind. And I read Gilgamesh by Unknown, translated by Stephen Mitchell. This is a Sumerian poem about Gilgamesh, who's an immortal king, and his friend Enkidu, who was originally sent to kill him, but ends up becoming his best friend and brother, and they go about doing unnecessary adventures and things to prove just how awesome they are. It's definitely not an Iliad or Aeneid. It's quite a lot shorter, and the language and the repetition and the straightforward storytelling I think is more suited to maybe like a song. Maybe it should be sung as opposed to just read. Then I read Hyperion by Dan Simmons. This is the first book in the Hyperion Cantos, and it's the story of 7 people who go on a pilgrimage. It's not your typical science fiction. I went into this thinking that it was going to be like a space quest, space opera, but what we get instead is more like a Canterbury Tales in space. So it's the story of each of the 7 pilgrims, and each is told masterfully in a totally different style from the ones that came before it, but still all really linked in content. It was really cool. So the different styles that he uses, example, are first contact journals between a priest and an Aboriginal tribe, a military science fiction story, a hard-boiled detective story, a romance story, and others. Then I read The Stone Angel by Margaret Lawrence. I love her storytelling so much. So The Stone Angel is a non-linear story about Hagar Shipley, who at 90 years old is looking back on her life while still dealing with the issues of aging. And, you know, I think Margaret Lawrence did that spectacularly well. Then I read Vivian Apple at the End of the World by Katie Coyle, and this is a YA book about a teenager who sets out to find more about this Church of America after her parents have been raptured. It's a very timely book, as the Church of America actually reflects a lot of the thoughts and actions of the followers of Trump and that regime. My only problem is, of course, YA insta-love. Then I read Tamarind Mem by Anita Raubadami. This is the 3rd book I've read by her, and they just keep getting better. I think this is my favorite out of all 3 so far. This is a story told in 2 parts. The first part is the story of the daughter growing up in India and then deciding to move to Canada. And the second part is the perspective of her mother. So we get part of her growing up and then her raising her own children. I really enjoyed how Anita Raubadami engages all your senses, especially sound. The stories take place around railroad colonies, so you get the sounds of the trains in the background, and it really made me want to read more by Anita Raubadami. I love it when a book does that. I also read Sonnets from the Portuguese by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. These are a collection of poems that she wrote for her husband, Robert Browning, who's also a poet. Some of the poems were a bit over-the-top, lovey-dovey. Some were almost like an obsessive, overly dependent kind of love, which I totally don't understand. But some of them were really quite beautiful. I'm glad I read the collection. I read The Clown Service by Guy Adams, and this was wrongly marketed as the spy thriller that Douglas Adams would have written. And this I don't agree with, because Douglas Adams already kind of wrote a kind of spy detective novel called the Dirk Gently series. And I felt like the style and the type of story wasn't really something Douglas Adams would do. That doesn't mean I didn't like this book. I really did. It's the story of Toby Green, who after one too many screw-ups in the British Secret Service is sent to go work with Service 37, also known as the Clown Service, mostly because the other agents and services don't take them seriously, because they tend to deal with abnormal things. This includes elements of supernatural and fantasy, but also science fiction elements, so it's really a neat mishmash. And I also found it was a great portrayal of PTSD. Then I reread a book, which usually doesn't happen, but this is Danny, Champion of the World by Roald Dahl, and I haven't read it in about 15 years or so, so I was okay with that. This is one of his few books for children that does not have magical elements. It is just a story about a father and son growing up in 1970s England. And it is an exciting book. I really like the end where you get that rush of excitement. The story starts to pick up pace and you're wondering, you know, are they going to get caught? And it's a wonderful book for both children and adults because it is about a parent-child relationship. And it's about finding out that parents are flawed, and has a great message at the end. It says, children, remember when you grow up and you get to be a parent, don't be stodgy, be sparky. So those are all the books I read. That's 18 books in total with one DNF, so 17 books for the month of January. Let me know what you read down below, and thank you for watching.